Yes. Perfect. Thanks, Emily. Okay,
Okay.
sorry about that, everybody. We'll get started now. So, a quick introduction. I'm Jasper Rawal, if you don't know me. My background is in physics. I work as a research scientist in the UK. Also, I run the Analog Astronaut Conference and Community, and I'm the director of the world's biggest analog. So, these slides might look familiar to you if you've been to our website. If you haven't been to our website, I encourage you to visit worldsbiggestanalog.com. There are slides that some of these slides are available for you to download on there, but there's also a lot more information on the website. And if you do want to apply for doing research on WBA, then please head to the website, which again will have a lot of information on there and an application form for you to fill in. So next slide, please, Emily. So what is the world's biggest analog? Well, in essence, this is, okay, so in the not too distant future, we are going to have a permanent human presence on the moon and possibly further down the line on Mars as well. Sorry, I have to keep admitting people. So these permanent habitats will not only be from the government agencies of various nations, but they'll also be private industry as well, who will all have to live and work together in the relatively hostile environment of space. So I like to use the analogy of Antarctica, where we currently have lots of different nations with their bases in Antarctica doing their own research independently, but also having to collaborate and come together due to the extreme environment and the isolation out there as well. So we are proposing to simulate this particular scenario where you will have various different habitats on the moon, also in orbit, and also on Mars as well. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief slide of kind of some of these challenges that you would face when living and working in space, environmental, habitat, and in terms of humans and occupants as well. Obviously, analog simulations can't address all of these challenges and issues, such as, there's nothing we can do here on Earth really to address things like the microgravity or the radiation. But we definitely can look at things such as the isolation effects, the limited resources, the kind of protocols and communication protocols that we need to think about when communicating between the different habitats, and the cross-cultural collaboration, how we're going to actually live and work together, how we're going to collaborate on research and general well-being as well. And we can certainly test out technologies and other research that we would want to take with us to space. Next slide, please. So essentially the solution to figuring out some of these challenges is to conduct what we call an analog space mission, which is essentially a simulation of a real space mission. So this quote I've just taken, "The gateway to the moon is through analogs," is actually taken from NASA's website. NASA has been using analog missions since the Apollo days. And so, there's a long pedigree of using analogs for simulating space missions. And now there are multiple analog habitats scattered around the world. These are just some of these pins on the map are just a few of these locations. So next slide, please, Emily. So what we're kind of proposing is we will be running a 1 month long, previous slide, Emily. Go back one, please. Yeah, so we'll be running a 1 month long mission that is going to be conducted simultaneously at all these world analog habitats. And we'll be carrying out research independently, but also collaboratively across these habitats. So the primary goal is to conduct that collaborative research and develop certain protocols for working together. Then the secondary goal of the world's biggest analog is to raise awareness via media, online, and an online educational program as well. So we're hoping to conduct a fair bit of outreach where we're going to create an education program that will be rolled out globally through schools and through an online medium as well. So on the next slide, please, you'll see that some other outreach ideas that we're proposing are also not only the education program and the social media and online media content, is also potentially a documentary film and possibly a game or some kind of interactive VR. This slide just kind of shows a few of the basic details. So as I mentioned, it's going to be a 1 month long mission. It's going to happen in September of 2025. We currently have around 12 habitats that are participating, which will basically result in around 60 to 100 crew members, plus the support staff as well. So that is a huge sample size. So if you're interested in human factors research, this is probably the largest number of crew that you would actually be able to conduct your research on. So we are open to collaboration, advertising, sponsors, product testing from private industry, academia, and partnerships with government agencies as well. We're hoping that the outcomes from this will include scientific publications, as I mentioned, the education program, and also the implementation of standards and protocols. And that's been a parallel project that we've been working on, which has been the International Guidelines and Standards for Analogs. And so we will be rolling these out during the World's Biggest Analog. Next slide, please. So the habitats that are currently participating are listed on the left-hand side. You can see, so I'm kind of categorizing them as advanced, intermediate, and beginner. So the core team, who's also been working with us to actually plan and come up with the world's biggest analog protocols and research ideas, are listed here. So these analog habitats have had a number of years of experience. The intermediate habitats, these are going to be some of the newer ones that are up and coming. Some haven't even been built yet. Some are currently in the process of being built. So these habitats will be able to participate in WBA, but they will be able to participate in perhaps a more limited way, if you like. So depending on how far along they are in their mission processes, how much experience they've had in the lead up to the World's Biggest Analog, we'll be able to kind of tailor it to their specific needs. And then the education program. So that's really a way of anybody anywhere in the world being able to participate in some way in WBA. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're hoping to have a game-changing impact in this by doing WBA, and some of our impacts and goals that we're hoping to create are, obviously, we want this to be fully inclusive. It is a global collaboration. We're very focused on making sure that the crews and just the team in general are diverse, and we are also very much focused on, sorry, go back one slide, please. Thank you. Very much focused on sustainability as well. And we want to focus on, we're going to be opening the research up to all different topics as well, but we are very much focused on research that has a demonstrable application and a positive impact on Earth as well. So talking a little bit more about the research side of things, we want to make sure that it's collaborative across the habitats and it's also replicable scientific research. There will, obviously, one of the outcomes I mentioned was science communication and outreach. We're also hoping to consider the community building side of things. So how is this going to impact local communities through outreach and social responsibilities? We are going to be creating a database into which the data from the research will be presented and available to the public. And hopefully, as a result of this collaborative effort, this will spur some new studies after WBA. So this first mission may just be the first of many of these collaborative missions. And as I mentioned, we're going to be rolling out the standards and best practices during the mission as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, there is an open call for research. Adriana's going to talk more about the research side of things. Please do go along to the website. The deadline is the 15th of December. Just summarizing what I've mentioned, we are going to be conducting a 1 month long mission. in the fall, autumn of 2025. It will be based in a number of habitats across the globe, and the research will be collaborative across those habitats. There's going to be over 60 crew members, over 12 habitats participating, probably something like 40 members of mission support as well. So we're talking about over 100 people involved in this. All research ideas are welcome. We're particularly interested in the ones that I've listed here on this slide. But as I mentioned, please don't hesitate to apply. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We can discuss things with you. So I'll leave it there for now, and then I'll hand it over to Adriana. Once Adriana's presented hers and then Emily's presented her slides, we'll open up the floor to Q&A.
Thank you, Jess. So I'm going to reiterate a little bit of the points that Jess already made, but in specifically focusing on the research angle. So what makes the WBA unique for you as a scientist, and why should you care about it? First of all, because it's a groundbreaking and global study. It's an international collaboration between scientists, engineers, doctors, science communicators, artists, and we all aim to unite world's analogs in historical simultaneous simulation. We also are hoping to collect a vast amount of data and from diverse group of participants. So like Jess mentioned, we will be involving at least 12 different analogs. We will have at least 60 different analog astronauts that will be scattered around the world. That will provide a broad variety of sample sets that we can collect. And this initiative gives us, as a community, an unprecedented opportunity to collaborate together. Like I mentioned, it can be a collaboration not only between the scientists, but also between different groups of people where, as a community, we will try to answer really large questions. So first of all, we will be focusing, of course, on studying the interactions between the crew members, but at the same time, we will be aiming at testing the equipment and technologies that will be used in the future space flights to develop standard operating procedures and optimize the operations and processes. We will also study or aim to study the adaptation to long-term isolation, as well as we will focus on developing overall communication systems and protocols for the ecosystem of outposts that we will be mimicking during this project. Next slide, please. So Jess mentioned that we are interested in specific groups of studies. Let's say we have a theme studies that we would like to come across our project, but of course all ideas and any innovations are welcome. So in principle, we are interested in studying or addressing sustainability issues to facilitate long-term and safe space explorations in the future. We would like to focus on studying human factors to understand physical, cognitive, social, cultural, and emotional factors of isolation. Of course, we would like to understand the environmental changes in the habitats, but also changes in the biology that affects the analog astronauts themselves. We would like to test and decipher different ways of communication in different communication systems. We would like to study the psychology in the sense of how its isolation is affecting human performance, as well as we would like to focus on robotic research to test technological solutions and create standard operating procedures. Next slide, please. So, if you have an idea, how do you get involved? We value your ideas, but more than that, we value your time. So we made the process very easy and hopefully problem proof. So what you need to do in the first step is to submit the note of intent. The deadline for submitting the note of intent is December 15th of this year. And in the note of the intent, we ask you to answer and provide 4 key informations. We would like to know who you are. We would like to understand your affiliation. We would like to, in general, understand your research idea, and very briefly know about the materials and methods. We have a science team of very renowned experts in the field of space biology and all related topics that will review your application, and successful applicants will be informed or will receive the invitation for level 2 by January 10th, 2024. So then what you will have to do, and what we will ask you to do, is to submit a full proposal by March 30th, 2024. We urge you or encourage you to make sure that all the research that you're proposing adheres to rigorous ethical standards and complies with specific requirements of the respective habitats. So if you will have any questions related to specific habitats, we will be here to provide answers. We expect or would hope that the findings that you will make during the world's biggest analog study or project will be submitted for publication in peer-reviewed journals or another appropriate scholarly platforms within 1 year from the completion of the data collection. The reason for that requirement is to promote sharing the knowledge and promoting analogs as a test beds for future space explorations. So if you're interested, please submit your application via our online form available on the website, worldsbiggestanalog.com. Next slide, please. And here are a few key information for you as researchers. So all applicants are responsible for securing their own funding sources for the proposed research. That's why we ask you to submit those applications very early on, so that gives you time to seek for independent funding. Like we mentioned before, average crew size per habitat is about 6 astronauts, but it will range roughly from 4 to 9, which is adding up to 60 analog astronauts total. For the majority of the habitats, we're able to control the crew's diet, exercise program, and schedule. Given the right IRBs are in place, it will be possible to collect blood, saliva, and urine samples from the crew. The majority of the participating habitats will have fridge and freezer available, so you can safely store your samples. However, if during the application process you clearly specify the equipment requirements that you might have for your projects, we might be able to provide specific additional equipment to make sure that your research is successful. If you have any questions related to what's been said here, of course, we're available to answer those questions right now, but in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to us through the email available on the website, and we will be happy to either answer the questions via email or schedule an online meeting with you. Thank you.
Hey everyone. Okay, so primarily this, first of all, can you guys hear me okay? Jazz, can you give me a thumbs up if you can? Okay, awesome. So obviously, primarily this webinar is about the research, but I did want to be able to jump in here and talk to you guys a little bit about the crew selection and training, because I know that's a topic of interest, and I'm sure researchers are also going to be a little bit curious about some of this process. So we're still in the process of finalizing everything, so I just wanted to give you guys a brief overview. So the crew selection and the training is going to go through in various stages. And then in the next slide, I'm going to give you guys a brief timeline or an estimated timeline of what we're projecting for each of these stages. So the way that this is going to work is we're going to open up a pre-application at the end of this year, and this is primarily to gain interest from people who are interested in participating as a crew member. And then we're going to go through and we're going to do an initial application submission. And our team is going to review all of the eligibility requirements and do kind of like a basic screening. After that, those who are selected to move into stage 2, we're going to be doing interviews and group assessments. So each individual selected throughout the application and screening is going to do a one-on-one interview. And then we're going to also funnel those people into small group interviews just to get an idea to see how they kind of interact with each other and then get to know them just a little bit more. And so after stage 2, once we move forward with selecting those from stage 2, we'll go into the candidate selection. We're going to be reviewing references and any other relevant experience that they basically solicit on their resumes and applications and things like that. We just want to be able to follow up and verify any kind of references and stuff. So then at that point, we will submit a formal candidate selection letter, and then they will have to accept, they'll have to provide like a formal acceptance of their participation at this stage. And at this stage, they will only be a candidate. They're not going to necessarily be confirmed as an analog astronaut or be assigned to a crew just yet. So once we go through stage 3, the next stage we're going to do is the training and evaluations. I forgot to change the heading on that one. Sorry about that. So the training and evaluations basically are going to go through the process of training these crews, these potential candidates for the mission that lies ahead. They're going to be going through a series of different trainings virtually. And then we're working on finalizing some potential options for some on-site training as well. So throughout this process, we're going to be kind of doing some participation assessments and evaluations. And also this will help us get to know the individuals and the individuals as a crew or as a group to figure out who they jive with best, and also look into their preferences as far as which habitats they prefer to go to. And the preference of habitats comes a lot from their location and their availability of where they can actually travel at that time. So that will also be taken into account. So they'll go through the training and evaluation, and then we'll go through the actual analog astronaut and crew selection. So this is when we finally decide, like, these specific individuals, they have met all of the training requirements, they've met the eligibility requirements, and we can also then say that they are going to be assigned to a specific habitat and a specific crew based on the cohesion that we kind of observed just throughout the training process. So there will be 5 different stages for the crew selection and training. And then here is kind of just a projection of what we're looking at in terms of like the time frame and things like that. So stage 1, this does not include the pre-application, the pre-registration in December. So we'll start with this in January, and it'll go to February. And I forgot to add that we're going to have 2 separate rounds for crew selection. We're going to spend our focus on round 1, and then round 2 will open up the floor if we need to fill any gaps or things like that. So we're going to be doing the application submissions from January to February for round 1. And then February, March, we're going to do the candidate selection process or the interviews. We'll do the candidate selection process in April. That's when they'll be selected as a candidate. And then for round 2, if we need to do a second round of crew selection or crew call, we'll do that in May. And then we'll do the interviews in June. And then we'll do they'll be notified if they've been selected as a candidate in July. In September of 2024 is when we plan to initiate the training portion, the training and evaluation. And this will be all the candidates, and it will be done virtually. So you can participate in this part of the training from all over the world. And then in February of 2025 is when we plan to do the final crew selection for the mission. And when I say final crew selection, again, this is when we're actually confirming that they will be participating in a mission, and they will be assigned a crew and a habitat. And so when it comes to the selection process, we'll be initially selecting more than what we need. We do this just for safety measures, because if someone's unable to travel, or someone decides that this is not for them anymore, or someone gets ill or injured, we're going to need to be able to fill those spots. So we have to make sure that we have people from our training pool to be able to pull from for things like that. So we will be pre-selecting the candidates for more than we actually need for the mission. And then when we go through the final analog astronaut selection, we will choose exactly who we need and also assign some backups. Now, anybody who participates in the training, it doesn't mean that just because they don't get assigned to an analog habitat or they're not able to travel to the site, it doesn't mean they cannot participate. They will otherwise be able to support the mission remotely, perhaps through mission control support or something like that. So we will be doing another webinar specifically for crew selection and training, just with more finalized information and more details, and then also kind of advertise this webinar a little bit more heavily to those who are interested in participating in the mission. So if anybody has any specific questions, I'm happy to answer those here, or you can always send us an email. Send us an email, and I'd be happy to answer those privately as well. So that's it.
Great, thanks Emily, thanks Adriana. So yeah, this next slide is just showing some of our partners who are involved, so some of the sort of major analog habitats that have been running for a number of years. And then I think the final slide should just have some contact, or rather some information, that's it, for who you can contact. If you have any research questions, please use the email on this slide. Obviously, you can reach out to us directly as well. We are all available via LinkedIn. And please do check out the website. So there's been a good amount of chat going on, and we will start taking some questions as well. I see Gernot's already got his hand up. So Gernot, please feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, not so much of a question, just a small footnote here as an add-on. There will be a centralized coordination structure in the form of the Mission Support Center that will be based in Vienna, in Austria. So that's so there is a framework that the all the habitat activities have some form of coordination. That's all I want to say.
Absolutely, and that's a very good point to make. There is a very much centralized mission support in, as Gernot mentioned, in Austria. And also we are already thinking about the communications protocols and side of things as well. So when you do come up with your research proposals, we will further down the line be able to discuss those kind of standard operating procedures protocols with you as well. There has been quite a few questions in the chat where people have been asking, what about this type of research? What about this other type of research? If you're in any doubt, please do apply regardless. It doesn't matter if you're unsure. We will welcome you to apply. And then if we have any questions, we'll simply reach out to you and have a conversation with you and ask you those questions. Okay, so I think Mason was next with her hand up, or his hand up, sorry.
Yeah, quick question on crew selection. How much are the sites themselves involved with which crew goes into our facilities, as opposed to the selection process just assigning crews?
Emily, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I think, can you maybe repeat your question? I don't know if I understood it fully.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on my phone and it's being yeah, so like with SAM and stuff, it's a very specialized habitat that we're running our analogs out of. How much is the involvement of, say, SAM in the crew selection for the specific crew that goes into our facilities a part of this, and how much is it more or less the program deciding who goes where?
So currently we are working with the habitat directors, including SAM, and that's kind of, it really depends on the habitat itself. we are primarily going through an initial review within WBA's team, but then the habitat directors, if they choose, then they will have a final say who goes into those habitats, and it just depends on how much or how little those directors want to have a say so in the crew selection with their habitat specifically.
Cool. That makes sense. Sorry, it was just unclear from the presentation if about it. So thank you for that.
That's okay. Thanks, Mason.
Thanks, Mason. So Exo Tesla, would you like to ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Greetings from a virtual reality stream of a virtual Mars habitat. ExoTesla proposed and submitted a proposal for research using virtual reality and metaverse technologies. This is useful for communication, human factors, and psychology, and also within the integration of multi-user environments across the globe. This is one thing that I wanted to tell you. And we are creating together, Matthew and I, who is present here of Iceland Space Agency, one more proposal for an all-vegan crew. I don't know if this is interesting within the, let's say, food research and alimentation during the missions.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's everything. Currently, we are open for all ideas, so everything is of interest. So please do submit the form on the website with your idea. So if that's vegan diet restrictions, absolutely put that in. It's difficult. It's much easier for us to process everybody's application and ideas if you fill in that form rather than if you kind of reach out to us individually. So please do fill in the form, and then if you want to ask us a question, you can reach out to us specifically on that afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Terry, do you want to ask a question?
Hey, this is crazy exciting. So to all of you that are working either on this or behind the scenes, thank you. Quick question. I missed because I was driving in San Francisco. It's like dodging zombies. What was the estimated time for the mission in 2025? What month?
So the duration it'll be 1 month long, and the month we're looking at currently is September. Okay. All right. We'll probably have to take FMARS off of that, but MDRS would be perfect anyway. Okay. We will be having precursor missions to the main one, so the likes of FMARS. We could have them lead up. And that would be extremely useful to have sort of our sort of but awesome, Jess. That's all. Thanks. No problem. Thanks, Terry. Julio, you have your hand up.
Okay, guys. I'm only to say hello. I'm with Aníbal here in Brazil. Hello. We are in our facility. It's the infrastructure for underwater extravehicular activity. Here we are also developing some activities in this pool. Yes, it's only to say that's happening a mission right now in Brazil with 6 participants. It's also we are planning more 3 missions until the end of 2023, and we would like to connect to some possible invited researchers, also participants. And everybody are welcome to connect with us, okay? And thanks so much. Only to say hello to everybody.
Thanks, Julio. So there's a question in the chat, Adriana. I think this one is most relevant to you. So the question is about availability of resources for researchers. So what is the availability for spacesuits and EVA research? And will research topics focusing on missions on construction/resource, mining, maintenance, science outside the habitats be considered? I can answer the last bit. Yes, it absolutely will be considered. But Adriana, do you want to maybe take the question about spacesuits and EVA research? I mean, honestly, like it is very much habitat dependent. And so what we can provide, once you've given us your initial proposed research idea, if you have specific questions like this, like what specific EVA suits will be available, for example, that's information that we can provide further down the line as well. But I don't know if Adriana, you want to comment on that as well, please.
I think you just exactly nailed the answer, which is it's going to be habitat dependent, so also research dependent. So we will have to understand exactly what are your expectations and how and if we can accommodate them based on the specific habitat.
Alejandro is asking, do you have tentative location countries? So the list I showed with the slide, which had advanced, intermediate, and beginner, the list of habitats in the advanced group, those are like the confirmed habitats that are going to be participating, and the locations of those I think are listed in there as well. For the intermediate list, those are kind of more like geographical areas, if you like, because that at the moment is no one is confirmed for the intermediate group, because those habitats are the ones that are still currently in development, and so we won't have the details of those particular habitats until probably later on next year. So I'm not able to provide specific locations on those. I can tell you that we're in discussions with habitats in the Middle East, Africa, potentially Caribbean, and Asia as well, and Australia. Julio, you still have your hand up. I don't know if you wanted to say something else. Okay, no. Jess, you have your hand up next.
Aloha. So the question I have is, you mentioned blood, urine, and saliva samples prior to starting, and then I assume that there would be also blood, urine, and saliva samples after. Is that correct?
So I think that's a question for Adriana about sample collection.
I am so sorry, but I didn't understand a word of this question. Could somebody repeat it, please? Like, it's because of the sound was not good, so that's why I didn't.
Very quiet.
So is it mandatory to have blood, urine, and saliva samples at the beginning and then also at the end of the 1 month?
Yes. So you're asking about the biological samples from the astronauts, is that your question?
Yeah, for all the accepted analogs.
Yes, we would like to have that possibility, or give that possibility to the researchers. It will, of course, be contingent upon the IRB's approvals specific for each habitat. But yes, the idea is to have availability for those samples.
Another question for you, Adriana, is when does funding for projects need to be confirmed before the full proposal submission, after any time?
That's an excellent question. I think we haven't internally decided on the timeline yet, but ideally we would like to have a continuous conversation with people who will be, or researchers who will be selected for a step 2, and oversee the funding application process and see what is the progress on your end and how does it look like. And so probably the answer to this question will be more case by case, depending on how application process is going and what funding you're applying for. But in general, we would like to know a few months in advance. So in the worst case scenario, we can fill in the gaps.
Yeah, so exactly like Adriana said, you don't have to have your funding in place before submitting your application to us. This is something that we'll be able to kind of work with you. Obviously, grant applications take quite a lot of time, so we're going to start looking at this early next year to give everybody enough time to make these kind of applications. Hang on, sorry, before I go to Regard, I think there was another question in the chat. I think it was for you, Emily. It was about the cruise. Oh, yes. And you've already answered it, so that's fine. But if anybody else didn't see it, it was just a question about, will first-time analog astronauts be considered as candidates for crew? And the answer is yes. Regard, you have a question?
Hi, Jess.
Hi, it's good to hear your voice, not see you, but hear your voice.
Thank you. I just joined the meeting and I think I missed all the information. So I'm asking about the recording.
Yes, it is being recorded and it will be made available pretty soon. I'm currently traveling in the US, so I'll try and upload it as quickly as I can, but there might be a delay of a few days. It's going to be dependent on the Wi-Fi. But yes, it will be uploaded. The first place it will be uploaded to will be the LinkedIn page. If you haven't connected with us through the LinkedIn page, yeah, and for anybody who hasn't, please go ahead and find the LinkedIn page. We can drop the link in here. And it will be uploaded there, and probably I'll upload it on the website as well, so it should be easily accessible.
Okay.
Julia, you have your hand up?
Thank you.
No problem.
Yes. One suggestion is if you have many researchers considering the possibility to apply surveys to world's biggest analog, one idea would be look for analog stations that are currently in operation to apply the surveys to some analogs, because this would be a very good idea, I believe, to refine the research and think about the improvements applied to some crews that participating during these missions, and this would be a good way to improve the method and and see the operations of this research before applied to world's biggest analog. This would be a good way to improve the methodologies.
Yeah, thanks for that, Julia. I think that's really useful information. Jessica.
Hello. Thank you for this meeting. And I just had a quick question. If you could expand, or Adriana could expand a little bit on the demonstratively applicable factor that you guys are looking for in research, especially how it applies to biological research, human microbiology, for example.
I think what we mean here is that we are trying to be an open community, and we would like to share the data that you will collect with all the other researchers. So that's why we have this deadline for releasing the outcomes of your research within 1 year. So that's the knowledge that you gathered directly feeds into research of following researchers and during following missions. So it is going to be a little bit custom made depending on the discipline. So
okay, so are you guys looking for research that can end with, let's say, like a product or some type of novel like system or like a tangible application to be used in future missions? Or are you okay with, are you also interested in asking more fundamental questions that can be useful for procedures in the future as well?
So I think it's an excellent question, because for biology, myself, I understand it very well that you don't really get end products after one iteration of the experiment. So definitely that is not a requirement for biology. So we will be looking into furthering our basic understanding of processes and just fundamental biology in that case. So not necessarily we will be looking for the end product or technology coming directly out of it immediately after the analog. So yes, so it's an excellent point for biology.
Thanks.
Okay, there's been a lot of chat in the type chat. I've tried to go through and see if I can catch most people's questions. If I've missed your question, maybe if you'd like to type it or paste it in again at the bottom, you can, or if you want to raise your hand and ask the question, please go ahead.
Hey, Jess, quick question for Emily.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Emily, are you gonna kick our tail like you did at the Analog Astronaut Conference?
That will depend. That will depend. Yeah, no,
I'm
not
still
as
sore.
much. So no, that's a lie,
No, that was
Terry.
awesome.
That's a lie. No, but that was so much.
I really, that was awesome. What you did was amazing. So if we're on that same kind of path, we'll be fit as a fiddle.
That is the goal. That is the plan. Yeah. Thanks, Terry.
Awesome. Yes, ma'am.
So there was a question in the chat from someone on the commercial side who is, what is the thought on alcohol? So I would say, and I would say this to all your questions about specific research, is that we are open to considering any and all of your ideas. So if you have some research that centers around the use or not use of alcohol, please submit that and we will definitely be open to considering that research. And it's nice to see there's a lot of chat on coming together and collaborating on submitting research ideas, which I think is great, given the fact that this is very much a collaboration is, you know, the backbone of this entire mission, WBA. So it's good to see that as well. We've got about 6-7 minutes left. If anybody would like to ask any more questions, we'll stick around for another sort of 6, 7, 10 minutes, but feel free to. Otherwise, I think we've pretty much covered most things. I'll stop the recording here. If you showed up late, if there was a time difference confusion, I apologize for that. But this is recorded and it will be made available to you. Alejandro, yes, you've got your hand up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. So a follow-up to my question about intermediate location. By the way, thank you for organizing this. This is awesome. And fortunately, I'm recovered from the exercise we did, Terry, so I'm good, and Emily. The follow-up to my question for the intermediate location, are you wanting people to help find those locations or something like that? In this presentation, you focus on crew selection, you focus on research, but then for the habitats for example, I'm originally from the Caribbean, Dominican Republic, and that's where I am this particular week. So I'm curious, should I be reaching out to local people for that and help out or not at this stage? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting and good question. So we're not actively necessarily involved in setting up any new or helping setting up any new analogs. We can certainly advise, but these intermediate analog habitats, they are the ones that have kind of reached out to us to say that they are currently in the process of either creating an analog or they've already kind of built the habitat. They might be doing their first mission soon and they'd very much like to be part of WBA, and we very much would like them to be part of WBA. So if there is a particular location that you're interested in perhaps setting up an analog in, then absolutely please go ahead and do that. If you need some advice or guidance, then all of us here are willing and able to kind of share that with you. But we can't be actively involved in kind of the sort of actual setup of any of the habitats. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Then I guess I'll ping you offline to see if there's a particular, like if in the Caribbean you already have people already reach out to your team.
Right.
So that way, then I could proactively contact them. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So if there's an area geographically that you are interested in, send a message to me. I will put you in touch with the people that kind of reached out to me to say that they're interested in creating a habitat.
Yeah, sure. That's what I mean. Thank you so much, Jess.
Okay, no problem. No worries. There's a great question in the chat that a lot of people have been asking about not having university affiliation or perhaps like even a commercial affiliation. We are taking independent scholars and we're very much open to that. I think the only challenge there might come when it comes to like applying for grants or IRBs or things like that, but that's something we can definitely work with. So don't let that hold you back in applying for submitting your research proposal. There's a bunch of questions. Yeah. Okay. How do I connect with you guys? Okay, so that's a question in the chat. So most, if not all of us, are on LinkedIn. Rather than sharing everyone's individual emails, I suggest please go ahead and connect with us through LinkedIn. And I think that's the easiest way. And then from there, we can exchange emails if we need to, or you can get on a Zoom call, depending on kind of what the discussion is about. It's not just the 3 names you see on the slide here. It's there's a whole team of people behind this. If you go to the website, you can download a slide deck which has everybody's names who's part of the team on there. There's also an About Us page which has all the people who are involved in this, their names on there. So you can reach out to any one of us at any time, really. Search World's Biggest Analog. Okay, yeah. Literally, the website is worldsbiggestanalog.com. I can put that in the chat if necessary, but it's also on there. So hopefully it's relatively easy to remember. Okay, so we are 3 minutes from the top of the hour. So last couple of questions, if anyone has any. Otherwise, I will pause the recording. And as I said, if you haven't thought of a question now, if you think of something later, just send us a message.